Well, here we are back for episode 2 on the 126 650 build to go into the 500, and as you'll see in a minute, I've stripped the engine right down and I'm just checking the end float. We'll have a look at what has come out and kind of what little bits of tarting up we're going to do prior to stripping the cylinder head and getting it off to Thurston Engineering to have the whole thing skimmed and raising the compression ratio. So I'll just flip the camera around. So here we have the engine completely disassembled. We'll need to clean these up a little, but the journals on the big end look good. Now I haven't actually had the main bearings out, but what I have done is now reassemble it and set the end float, or at least I'm checking the end float, which I think is now correct. It's about 0.15 millimeters. I do need to check whether or not I'm missing something from behind that pulley, and then I'll be able to reconfirm whether that is correct. But I've given the block a little bit of a jet wash. It's not perfect, but it's slightly less messy than it was previously. All of the pistons are out and fine. The bearings, well, one of the bearings has a little bit of wear there. You can just see some of the copper surface coming through there, so I'm going to check whether those are standard sized or whether they're oversized bearings, because depends very much on whether that crank has been ground at any point in the past. No reason to suspect it has, because all the pistons and everything look original. It's a little bit grubby on the surface there, but all the rings are absolutely fine, so we'll be reusing that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to tape up all of the mating surfaces here, and then I'm going to run these through the sandblaster just to make them look a little bit tidier, and then I will re-hone these bores here, because I don't know if you can see on camera, it's basically is just slight staining. There isn't really a ridge that you can feel with your fingers, other than a little bit of carbon deposit on there, so that will clean up nicely. We'll strip the cylinder head today as well, get the valves out, get the studs out, and get that ready to go off to Thurston to have them mill, I think I say about 1.6 millimeters off there. What I might also do is have them lighten the flywheel. So we've done that. What we'll do is we'll get these taped up and we'll get them in the sandblaster, and then I'll come back in a moment and we'll see what they've come out looking like. Well, we're all taped up, ready to go into the sandblaster. I'm not going to be doing it at particularly high pressure, so that'll just stop any of the mating surfaces getting peened at all. Unfortunately, that is now going to have to wait, because of all the things that could have happened, my plug has broken on my sandblaster, so I don't have a spare plug, so I've got to go and get another plug. So we'll put that back over here, and then we'll start stripping down the cylinder head, and I'll talk you through how to strip the cylinder head and take the valves and whatnot out, and get that ready to go for, as I say, hot tanking and skimming. So the first thing is to remove these studs. Now, to remove studs from a block like this, if you tighten two nuts against one another, you should then be able to loosen the lower one, and it will start to wind the stud fully out. You have to make sure that they are actually tightened and locked against one another, otherwise you just end up undoing the nuts. Now this is got some thread lock on it, or it did have some thread lock on it, so it took a little bit to get started, but as you can see, that stud is now winding nicely out of there, and we'll pop that into the corresponding hole on the rocker gear, and then we'll just do the same on this side, and then with the smaller 10mm nuts we'll just wind these two out there, and that will leave us with a nice face for getting our valve spring compressor on there, compressing these springs, removing the collets, and then getting the valves back out. So I'm not quite sure how well this is going to actually record on camera because of the angles and stuff, but here we've got a valve spring compressor, here we've got a cylinder head that's now got 3 valves in, as I've already taken one out, and the aim of this is that you pop it over the head like this, so that it sits on the valve at one end, the valve spring on one end I should say, and the valve or part of the head on the other side. You then compress this down, which pushes on the valve, tensions it, the valve spring I should say, tensions it and allows you to get the retaining collets off. Problem is, well, I've got this angled, I don't have enough strength in one hand to do that, so I'm going to have to move this down out of the way and give this a bit of a push. Oh, see if I can get that to go, which it absolutely should do because it's set the same as it was on the other side. There we go. So you can now see the valve spring is compressed, and if I get my little magnetic tool I can work the collets out here that are what retain the valve. Collet is, if you're not aware, just a sort of a V-shaped split circle like that. It's got a taper on it. Where's my camera? It's got a taper on it so that it sits in the taper of the valve spring there, and as it's under tension it will hold itself in position. Now I did have a little screwdriver around here somewhere for working out the second one there, as the angle that I've done this at has left that second one a little bit wedged in, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of faffing around to try and get that out. Now where did I put that bloody screwdriver? I don't know. Well, I'll come back off cam in a minute once I've found that screwdriver and we'll get that second collet out. Okay, I've managed to loosen that enough that I can now get it round, get that off as well, and I'll just pop that into my box down there, and then all we do is we reverse the process. So back over this side, I will now remove the tension off that spring. This despite being a nice Sykes Picavan spring compressor, I've never had that much luck with it compared to my cheaper one. It seems to get properly wedged down. There we go. Now what we've got is the valve spring. These are dual valve springs, okay, so an inner and an outer, and then the valve spring collar there, and that means if I pop that down there, what we can then do is we can push out the inlet valve and take that out. It's obviously been sitting for a while because there's a bit of corrosion on the back, which is why they'll all be re-lapped in when the time comes, decoked, although after about 10 minutes of running they'll look exactly the same, but we'll decoke them and then we'll re-lap them in against the valve seats. And whilst we're here, we've got the head like this, you can just see the the valve seats there. There's no valve seat recession or anything like that, so it's all good. And what I will do is, off camera, I will just do the remaining two. This is a bit of a pain in the arse because these are supposed to be M10 13mm head bolts that go in there. This side has got a stud, which is fine, but then there's an oversized, I think that's an M12 that's in there with a 17mm nut on the end of it, which means that at some point this has stripped, so I'm going to have to put an oversized bolt in on my new exhaust, which I don't really want to do, but it's not the worst thing in the world, because it is at least on the side that points towards the back of the engine, or the back of the car I should say, so it's going to be at least easy to get to. But that was quite tight when I tried to get it off, so it's either going to need to be cut off or at the very least heated up with a blowtorch before I remove it. So there we go, cylinder head is now stripped. Yes, admittedly I haven't taken those studs out yet, I do need to do that, but before it goes off to the machine shop they will be done. We'll do a final check on the end float on there, and hopefully before the end of this video I'll have got a new plug for my compressor, and then I'll be able to actually sandblast all of these. And I need to order in some big end bearings once I check that they are all standard size, and then we'll weigh both of the pistons and we'll make sure that they're balanced. I mean, they'll be close enough, they are covered in carbon, so the weight is never going to be all that accurate, but it's not like we're building a high-spec race engine here. So literally as I was finishing doing that last bit of recording, had a bit of good news, because Toto from Ricambi Fiat 500 got in touch and confirmed that there is nothing missing from the crank pulley, and that the end float measurements of 0.15mm is absolutely within spec. So that's great. That means I don't have to fanny around with anything more over there, and I can get moving on with getting the bearings, cleaning some stuff up, and just beginning the reassembly whilst the rest of it goes off to be machined, and we'll wait for however long it takes the machine shop to get those bits done. So I did manage to get a new plug on the compressor, and I've just put these through the sandblaster, so they're just back to a kind of a raw finish. You won't really see them under the tinware anyway, but they are at least there in the right position. Just did a slight refacing of the top edge with a whetstone. Still need to get my hone, because the hone I've got doesn't go down small enough to do these cylinders, so I've got another one coming, which again is just basically a whetstone that you oil and run down on a drill. So I'll show you how you do that before I start popping these back together. I've got the big end bearings on order, so once they arrive I will stick the pistons back in and start connecting the bottom end up, and then I can start making sure that my timing gear here is actually, that top dead center is set correctly. So in order to do that, and in order to set the timing on the valve timing, I've got a little timing protractor that will go on there, and then we'll use that to mark where top dead center is with a dial gauge to ensure that it's in the correct place, so that then the engine can actually be timed for the ignition correctly, as well as being timed correctly to the cams. So I've got to wait on a few more parts to arrive, and once those parts have arrived, which for me will be a few days, for you will be a matter of seconds, I'll walk you through how you set all of this stuff up and actually make it function properly as an engine rather than just a whole bunch of parts. So we're just at Thurston, and I've just dropped the head off to have the 1.6mm skimmed off it. He reckons it'll probably be done by the end of the week, so we'll wait and see when the call comes through, and then other than that, just jet back home and start assembling the bottom end. So we've done a little bit of tidying up in the garage now, and we're ready to hone the barrels. So let's just get some gloves on here, and we'll take the barrels off here one at a time. So as I say, I want to try and hone out where there's a little bit of a rough edge there, and just get back in some of the cross hatching. So I've just got a small 3-leg hone here, which I'll do on a drill. And just pop that down like that. Get a little bit of oil into here just to act as lubrication. Pop that round. There we go. Should be good. And then we'll get the hone here. Still a little bit more that needs doing there, but we're very close to finishing that. For that segment has gone on for quite a while, so I'll do the rest of that off camera and do the second one, and then we'll get these ready to go back on. My piston rings are in the post and should be here tomorrow. So once I've honed both of those barrels, cleaned them up, clean the top faces up, we'll then I said piston rings, I didn't mean piston rings, I meant big end bearings. We'll then chuck the new big end bearings in here, and we'll get the bottom end starting to be. I can also, now that I've got my dial gauge here, confirm the end float. So I have checked this already using just a feeler gauge on the inside of the bearing, but on here each of these divisions is 0.01 of a millimetre, so I know this isn't zeroed, but what we should find is as we pull out this should move no more than 15 divisions on here, so to around about 20. So that is from 22 down to 32, sorry, 18 down to 32. I know it's a wildly inaccurate gauge, but it's moving 0.15 of a millimetre, 0.15 of a millimetre, which puts it smack bang in the middle of the 0.1 and the 0.2 measurements that you want for end float on here. So that's how you can test it if you have the engine completely assembled. I know it's missing the timing cover, and you can't get to the bottom to check it with feeler gauges on the inside of the bearing at the back there. So it's now the next day. We've got a few things we're going to try and achieve today. Number one being unboxing this parcel here and just double checking that what is inside is what I think is inside. And this is a set of 3-hole bearing shells for the big ends, so we'll swap those out in a moment, replace them. And then there is a timing chain set, so that is the camshaft gear and the crank gear and the chain itself, and a new gasket and a new oil ring for the timing cover. But I might not bother replacing that because the one I've got looks good. So let's get rid of that box into the pile of shame down there. Let's pop this up out of the way for later on, once I've done a couple of little jobs. So first things first is I'm going to want to get the the barrels beg your pardon, back into the head. Now these have got remnants of an old gasket on them there, so they're quite often held in with, sealed with paper gaskets, which I don't think they really need. However, what I am going to do is put on a little bit of Loctite gasket mating stuff before I plonk these back on, and that should mean that they will seal nicely and that will stay soft and it will be able to be compressed when the head goes down, which is what I want, because obviously I don't want to raise the deck height. And once I put the pistons in, we can check the deck height a little bit later on in a few moments. Just going to pause this for a sec whilst I get some gloves on. Okay, so we'll get a little bit of this Loctite 5922 and we'll just smear this around the ceiling face here that seats against the block. And a little bit of this goes quite a long way, so I don't want to get too much on there. Nothing ever escapes past it anyway. At least I don't know of anybody that's ever had any problems with compression loss or anything of that sort. Put that in there and we'll just push it down, and then that is in permanently. Or at least until the next time I need to take it out, which is hopefully not anytime soon, as it does get slightly irritating having to strip engines down. I don't hate it, but there are other things I'd rather be doing. So again, let's just get this on here, wipe that around. Everything always goes smoother the second time round. So there we go, let's pop that back in there. And let's get this rear barrel on and pushed into place. Now, because I have no cylinder head on there for checking the deck height and for installing the pistons, I'm just going to put a little copper spacer in there and just tighten down one of the head nuts rather, against it. I don't know if I've got another one for the back that's even vaguely the right length. That one might do if I stick some penny washers in there just to fill up the gap. So I'll do that in a second. Let me just pause that whilst I go grab some washers. Okay, so I've got the nuts on there just to stop these barrels from sliding up and down as I move the pistons around in there. And I've got the new main bearings, or the big end bearings I should say, open ready. So I'll just take off the rod nuts from there and we'll pop that off. There we go. So you can see the bearings in there where we've got the copper surface showing through, which we don't really want. So I'll just push that out. It's already got a lot of oil lubrication in there, so I won't put any more in. And we'll just pop in the new one. In a minute I'll put a bit of assembly lube on the face of that. You can see that's the tri-metal bearings. So let's just push that one out. And again, we'll get a bit more oil on that one, I think. There you go. And seat that one in position as well. Now, whilst you can just do it with normal oil, as I have some assembly lube here, which is just slightly thicker, longer lasting stuff that will stay stuck to that until we come to crank it over and get oil pressure. I'll pop that on there like that. So that is ready to go in. I've got the crank sitting there at the bottom of its throw. So we'll just slide the piston in there. We'll get the ring compressor on. Get that ready there like that, and get the bottom end of a rubber mallet over here to tap that in. Now these are new ring compressors and it's not the one that I normally use, so we'll see if it's good or absolutely shit. Sorry, swearing on there. Absolutely rubbish. In a short while. I've got a feeling that rubbish is where it's at, because I think that is, yep, that hasn't compressed that oil ring, so let's try again. Maybe that's because I've not got the tool seated correctly. Okay, let's try again. I can always go back to my other one. Yep. Looks like we're going to need to go back to my other ring compressor. This is the problem with buying cheap tools, is they're not very good, and I don't think I've got a smaller one of these, so let's just pause that. Actually, in the end I did find one that was a sort of slightly the right size, and clearly didn't film myself tapping that in, but it's in now. So what we'll do is we'll just make sure that that is rotated so it can go down and seat against the journal here. Which it duly does. And we'll get the main cap on there, the big end cap. And I'll just whack on these two nuts. Now these will be torqued down and Loctited in place with some blue Loctite, but I will do that after I've checked the deck height and confirmed top dead centre on the engine, because in case I have to take them out again, I don't really want to be constantly torquing them and retorquing them and everything else like that. But that there is good. So we have motion. It's the deck height is almost spot on with the top of the barrel there, so we're not losing much in the way of compression because of that. So what I'm going to do is exactly the same for the cylinder underneath, and I don't need to film that because that's just exactly the same as what I've just done. So we're back just on the stand here, and as you can see, the engine turns over by hand nice and easily. There's no stiff spots, full range of motion, absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to confirm that the top dead center pointer on here actually corresponds to the top dead center on the timing cover here, and there is actually a 10 degrees before top dead center casting in here, which is good because that's the static timing for this engine. So what I'm going to do is just run a wire brush over this quickly, highlight these with some silver paint, and then we'll take the crank pulley off and just pop this back on and use our dial gauge indicator on the top to make sure that we've got top dead center. And I'll just show you how to do that quickly, and we can confirm that the timing marks are all lined up. For anything that we do later on when it comes to timing the cam and getting the cam pulley and stuff in place, obviously that's going to need to be done without the timing cover on, so I'm going to need to make a second timing mark on here, which is what I'm going to be using my protractor for setting correctly, so we can time it to top dead center. So I mean, top dead center is always in the same place, but you can put a marker wherever on the crank pulley and somewhere else on the engine to indicate where top dead center is. But as we've got a mark on there already, we might as well use it where we've got something to reference it. So I'll just pause the camera for a moment whilst I sort that bit out. It might be difficult to see from where the camera is positioned, but I've got the pointer just not quite at top dead center, and as I roll it up and it hits top dead center, you should see this dial gauge pause and then start moving in the opposite direction as it rolls past, just to confirm that that is correct. I'm going to have to hold that steady there. So as we go up, oh, let's try that again. That gauge is, I wasn't sitting on the piston, that's why. So it goes up and then it starts. Do you know what, I did this off camera and it was working absolutely perfectly. So as soon as I turn the camera on, it decides to not do what it's supposed to do. No, I can't seem to get that on. Can't seem to get that on film. So you're gonna have to take my word for it about the fact that I did manage to prove with the dial gauge that that is top dead centre, and it is, because it goes up and then it stops and it rolls over. There isn't much of a dead point at the top, so we know top dead centre is in the correct place, which just means that it's going to be a hell of a lot easier to time everything later on, knowing that that's in the correct place. So now the cover has got to come off again, so we can get the timing chain on there. So before we put the timing chain in, we've got to put the camshaft in. Now I've already checked this for wear on any of the lobes. It's got the driver for the oil pump in there, and this goes in here. That is for the distributors. That's the distributor drive gear, but all of the lobes are fine. There's no flattening or anything on there. But again, before we put this together, we're going to give it a liberal dose of assembly lube over all of the mating surfaces. Includes the cam lobes and all of the bearings and the thrust surfaces, and likewise I'll wipe a whole bunch of that into here. And when we come to put the cam followers in, or the lifters, whatever you want to call them, later on, they'll also get a nice dose of assembly lube. So I get the thrust face covered there and everything, and then that should slide in relatively nicely. Depends on whereabouts the main counterweight is on the crank, which is clearly right in the way of me getting that in. So let me just pop this in and roll that over a little bit. Actually, a bit of wood is blocking the crank from turning. And my oily hands are not helping. So let's just get that down there. Everything goes so smoothly when you're trying to film it. There you go. So if I haven't got that trapped absolutely there. Do you know what? It's probably going to be easier if I put the engine over here like that, and we can at least see what we're doing, eh? There you go, easy as that. So I'll probably leave that like that because, beg your pardon, bit of a cold here. What I need to do now, and again I'll just pause this, is take the new timing gear out, and then we'll get it on, and then that will probably be it for this this video because it has gone on a little bit. I don't want to bore people too much, so let's just pause that. So like any engine with the timing chain, you've got three parts to this. You've got the pulley that goes on the crank, you've got the pulley that goes on the cam, and you have the chain, the timing chain itself. Now this timing chain does have an orientation to it, so it's got these little fingers there. I think they're supposed to be self-tensioning. They go on the outside. This has been installed incorrectly in the past because there's sorts of grooves in the back end of the main bearing there, which don't actually do any harm, but it's where this has been installed in the incorrect direction. Now you've always kind of got to do this with about 3 pairs of hands, because what you've got to do is you've got to get these 2 dots. If you can see them there, they're your timing pointers. They need to be in line with one another, and you've kind of got to simultaneously get the chain around this one and the chain around this one and slip them over here. Now I've kind of tried to help myself out a little bit by already, these holes, there's one of them that's offset, so it can only go in one direction. So I've already spun the cam round to align that, and this has got a little wood rough key in it, so I'll pop that onto there first of all, just get it loosely in line, and I'll turn the engine over to get that pointing, that timing pointer pointing roughly where I want it, and then I will see if I can get the chain around there and all of the holes to line up here, which I can't because I've got my pointer in the wrong place. A couple of teeth out, I think I'm 1 tooth out now. That looks to me like we are correct. Yeah, that might still be 1 tooth out. No, it was right before. There we go. So I'll just pop I'm going to get new ones of these. These are, you kind of tap the end up there, and again these will be Loctited and torqued down properly, but until I can confirm that the timing on the cam is correct, I'm just going to leave them fitted in as they are. Might help if I put them between the correct pairs of bolt holes right there. So we'll get them in there and get this in on the other side. I bet this is fun for you guys, watching me tighten some 10mm bolts. But if you do like the content, please give us a like, please give us a subscribe, because it's what makes the difference between me just sitting in my garage and doing this stuff, or actually filming it and talking people through it. Now, I'm not claiming to be some kind of professional expert. I'm clearly just a tinkerer in the garage, but do you know what? If there's a bit of advice that I might have given you in the past that's helped you out, then whoever you might be somewhere on the internet, you have made it worthwhile. So let's have a look at that. I'll just flip this engine actually up the correct way and then get the camera off the stand so we can look at this in a bit more detail. It's getting awfully close to the front of the bench now. It's a little bit dangerous. Okay, let's just take that off. Let's just stop this. Right, so there you go. From the front, there is the timing gear. There are the two timing pointers lined up, the two little dots. And if I can't do this with one hand particularly easily, let's just crank that over. And it is all running smoothly. So we bring that back up to top dead center. Try and do it a little bit more smoothly than I did it last time. We should find that the timing pointers line up, although that actually might not be top dead center on the compression stroke. Let's try again. That was it. I just went past it. Don't forget that the cam actually moves at half the speed of the crank, so it should be lined up and timed so that when those two dots are pointing together, number one is at top dead center on the compression stroke. If they're not lined up when it's at top dead center, it's because it's on the exhaust stroke. Okay, so we'll leave the video there. As I say, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Check out the next time that I do any filming from this, I should have the cylinder head back. Once I've got the cylinder head back, as I say, I'll talk you through just confirming that the timing on the cam is correct. These aren't adjustable pulleys, but you can make them adjustable by slotting the screw holes if you need to. Hopefully I won't. But we'll just do the same little trick with the dial indicator on the cam followers in order to check that. And once that's all confirmed, well, then we'll just pop the timing cover on for the final time. We'll torque everything up and then work on porting that cylinder head and installing it. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Here we are again. Since the last video, what I've done is I've reinstalled the timing cover, the oil pump fully engaged, and I have torqued up and Loctited with blue Loctite down the end of the rod cap nuts there. So this is now tilted on its side, because the next step is to go to the engine that's already in the blue car and to take off two things. I need to take off the 4 litre Abarth alloy sump, and I need to take off the extended oil pickup pipe that I've built that goes with that. The oil pickup pipe just connects on the end of two threaded studs that run through here, and there's an oil seal that allows the oil to be sucked up through here via the oil pump into that part of the cover. So that needs to go on, and then we need to get the sump on, which is just much easier. If the engine is in this orientation, then I can put it on flat, and then I can flip the engine, the block over, and then like that's it. It shouldn't have to be flipped on its back again. Timing cover does need a little bit more degreasing work on there, but fundamentally it's all good. These aren't the final bolts that are in there. I'm going to go to Tristan at Tiny Car Company and get some nice little Fiat stamped ones off him, I think, if I ever get round to heading over there, and that should finish off nicely. And that's another reason why I don't have the crank pulley on, because the crank pulley gets in the way of getting to this this bolt up here. So those temporary ones are all in place. So I will go and I will get that sump off and we'll refit that. But since the last video, Thurston Engineering have now finished my cylinder head, and here it is. It's a little cleaner than it was when it left. But the most important part is the back, or the bottom, or the face, okay, is now machined down by 1.6 mil. So you can see where there was originally that step, that square around there, that has all been milled off, and the face is now perfectly flat, and we've gone slightly into that cooling fin as expected. So that theoretically should be good to go back on, but what I am going to do, and I'm not going to do this on camera because I've got a whole video or a whole couple of videos dedicated to that, is I'm going to port the exhaust outlets, because as you might be able to see where the rust from the firing is there, those can come out quite a lot, and will smooth all the transitions in here and make this whole thing a lot wider. I will cut back the valve seats on the inlet, because the valve seats do stick out quite a bit into the airflow, and bearing in mind that the airflow on this manifold here is actually really smooth, other than where it interferes with the bolts. It would be nice to have exactly the same smooth airflow straight down to the valves. Can't really open up this port much, if anything at all. I'll try and sort of radius the edges slightly, just take that sharp edge off there again to smooth the airflow, because it's coming from a larger bore to a smaller bore, and so even if I can't match them the same, I'll radius that over so it just doesn't put a big step to mess up the airflow. We won't smooth these because you do want your inlet air to be turbulent. If it's too smooth, fuel tends to drop out and form droplets on the edge, and we really don't want that. We want it to be turbulent as it goes in. So a slight bit of changing to the profile of that, cutting back the valve seats, valve stems I should say, and then just working on the exhaust ports, and then that will be good to go back on. If you saw my my unboxing video, this is what was in it, and this is the manifold adapter for it's a Delorto FZD carburetor, but it works perfectly well with my HS2 SU carb off a Mini that I'm going to be fitting to that, because that's quite a decent, useful constant velocity carburetor. Might need a little messing with the jets, but I think if I remember rightly, that's already jetted for a 650 Triumph motorbike. So this is a 650, should be good. Okay, right, so enough waffling. Let's get that back over there, and let's get on with removing the sump from the other engine and getting all that fitted onto here. So I've been out to the other car now, and I've taken off the oil pickup pipe, and I've taken off the sump, which I'll fit in a moment. If you're familiar with these cars, you may notice this pickup pipe looks slightly different, and that's because, being a 4 litre sump, it needed an extension. Now, there's a few that you can buy that are basically sort of like spring-loaded collars, a little bit like this, but all I did a long time ago now actually was just fold up a ring round there, drill 3 holes in it, and weld it to the pickup pipe itself. This is set to sit roughly the same distance above the baffle on the bottom of the sump as the standard one is, but that's why that looks slightly different. It feeds straight through here, straight into the oil pump, and there's an O-ring in the bottom there, which means you need to tighten it down sort of evenly on both sides so you don't crush the O-ring. So What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick the 4 litre sump on here. It's going to have a 4 litre sump because being an oil cooled engine, an air cooled engine I should say, it relies almost entirely on the movement of oil to cool it down, as well as a little bit of the fan air blowing over the top of it. So the fact that we've doubled the volume of oil is gonna help with that. I appreciate that even with hyperlapse on, that was quite a boring segment of man screws in bolts, but they are quite nice little Allen headed bolts, stainless ones, and locking washers and whatnot, so they do look quite nice down there. This just happens to be in a Bath branded sump. There's loads of other ones out there, but as I said earlier on, it's just for additional cooling. So we are now at the point where we've got oil sump, we've got oil pickup, we've got the bottom end torqued up and locked down, we've got the timing cover on, albeit I may well change these bolts and they would have spring washers on them even if I don't change them, and then we'll be able to get the crank pulley on there. I've just rested the cylinder head up on there for the time being because I've got nowhere else to put it, and then I will work off camera on porting these out. So the next time that you see this engine, it is likely to be fully assembled like this and ready to pop the flywheel on. Once I pop the flywheel on, I'll be able to put the fuel pump, connect up the exhaust, and we'll be able to do a test fire on it. Yes, there's no timing gear, but that will all be on there by the time we get there next. This irritating little stud needs to be cut off and then drilled and pulled out with an easy out, because this was some shitty bit of non-hardened steel rod that someone had put in there at some point, and when I welded a nut on the end of it to take it off, all it did was twist and uncoil the metal, and then it eventually snapped and snapped and snapped again. So I'm just leaving it there and I'm going to drill it out. I do need to remember, hence the reason why I'm saying this on video, that this is M10, these are M8, so one of my exhaust bolts is not going to fit and I'm going to need a new exhaust bolt. But I think it's looking quite decent, so catch us in a few seconds, but probably a week or so for me, to see the ported head and the whole thing starting to go back together. So I'm just taking my sweet time doing some of the port work on here, hence not bothering to film it. But if anybody's interested, this is where where we started with the casting. So what I've done is I've just drawn on there roughly where the outline of the firing is. I want to kind of smooth all of this out. There's a real rough line in here, kind of lines up with this V all the way through there, that I want to smooth out, and I want to enlarge this by about 4 mil across the diameter to make it all line up nicely. So I've done one side, and as you can see here, it's now wider, it's smoothed out. I've improved the flow on this the short runner, the short radius there, and got rid of that horrible V in the casting. I don't know if you can see it very well up there, but it's polished up now to about, well, it was 400 grit, and then I polished it with some metal polish, at this end, I've opened up the bowl, got rid of any of the really sharp radiuses here. So there's a sort of a ledge on that side that's now gone. It's all smoothed off around there, and cut back the valve guides just enough to smooth the flow all the way through there like that. It shouldn't make too much difference to heat transfer from the exhaust valve, because it's not going to be very hot, and likewise I've done it, you can't see it very well on there, I've done it on the inlet as well. It's not going to rev more than about 4,000 RPM maximum, so cutting that back isn't going to cause too much in the way of valve wobble, because again the light's not great in here. I did have to remove quite a lot. That's the original, and that is the cut back one. On the inlet, I've again just opened the bowl up to remove some of the valve shrouding, but I've left it as it comes from the die grinder carbide bit. And the reason for that is the same reason why I've just slightly opened this up and left the rough surface, is you get a little bit of laminar flow effect. There you go, you can see it a bit better there, where it acts like the dimples on a golf ball and smooths the airflow on the inlet to keep it nice and fast and stop the fuel pooling on the wall. Whereas here you want to make sure that the exhaust is as smooth as you can. Not going to bother doing anything to the combustion chamber, because all it will do is stop carbon sticking for about 2 seconds. So now I'm going to go and do the other side, and by that time hopefully the head gasket will be here and I'll be able to put the whole thing back together. So some more days have passed and some more deliveries have arrived. As you can see, now got the head gasket, got the hold down clamp for the distributor. I've just about finished porting both sides. This side needs a little bit more of a clean off. I am, however, waiting now on my M8 tap so I can re-tap the side that had the damaged stud in it. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is have a little look at this starter. Now I appreciate it is absolutely dirty as hell, but it's what came with the car, and it was unknown when it arrived, so I don't actually know if it's going to be any good. It is for a later 126, so it's not a cable operated one. So I'm going to wire this up and see whether or not I can get this working, and then at least that's another little step in the right direction. Well, I've cleaned up some of the contacts here, just got a little earth on, and although I just had a tiny jumper wire to jump between these two terminals here, it did cough and sound like it was about to do something. I don't have any proper terminals to do that properly, or a switch to wire in lines, so it's not much of a test, but it is at least got connections internally, so quite how good it's going to be we'll find out later on when I actually wire it up properly and connect it to the block. But like, it'll do for now. It's not completely dead. It's obviously got windings and whatnot inside it, so I'll chalk that up as a win, and I'll give that a bit of a clean and pop it back on the shelf for later on when it's neat. Right, it's been a little while since I've actually done anything on this, and I can't even remember what I said in the last 2 seconds of video, but I have now installed the valves and the valve springs. I've drilled and tapped that for M8 where it's now slightly off centre. I've elongated the hole there and done the same on the gasket, so it's now just a case of popping it back onto here and then installing the head studs, sorry, the bolts on the head studs, and then tightening it all down. So I'll pop that all together now, drop the valve gear on, and then we'll see where we're at. And just like that, the head is on, the head is torqued down, the valve gear is installed, the valve clearances are not set. It is sitting at top dead centre. Valve clearances need to be set. Not going to bother with doing that until I actually fire it up. And famous last words, I will clearly forget to do that, and then I'll wonder why it doesn't start. But maybe if it's on video, I might stand a chance of remembering. So all of the head bolts, the head nuts, and I notice I did say bolts earlier on in the video, clearly I meant nuts, are all on. You've got these acorn nuts, these normal ones. And then what's interesting about this is that for this adapter here for the carburetor, you actually replace these with these smaller 15mm head bolts. Well, they're sort of like the nuts, sleeve nuts that come up here and then have a stud on the end. They're weird, but they're nice and narrow, so they don't cover over the hole there, which is obviously decent. And they allow that carb adapter to mount on there. The annoying thing is when I do run this up to temperature, I then need to re-torque the head studs down. And what's interesting about this, and by interesting I mean using that as a euphemism for shit, interesting about this design is you can't actually get anything on here or here with the valve gear installed. So when you torque it all down and you fire it up and you run it up to temperature and you allow the cylinder head gasket to compress, you then have to take all the valve gear off and retime the entire thing after you've torqued it down, which is mildly irritating. But it should all be good now. So what I need to do before I can call it a day for tonight is, where this had been faffed about with, and this has now got an M10 hole in it, and it had a stud, and this is an M8 hole, but it's not in the right original position. I've had to drill out the gasket here. I've also had to sort of oval the hole for the gasket down the bottom and drop that on the floor. And then what I've had to do is on the exhaust flange itself is oval that hole there, enlarge that hole, and the final bit of work for today is taking one of my M10 socket headed bolts and turning down the end, because this is too wide and clashes with the exhaust pipe itself. So I'm just going to knock up a little homemade lathe, which basically means put that in a drill, spin it round and get a grinder to turn this down, and then I should be able to pop the exhaust manifold on here. The rest of the exhaust is still on the car and it's dark and cold, so I'm not going to go and get it yet. Right, repair is now done. As you can see, we turned that right down from its original size down to something considerably smaller. It does actually need to come out and go down a little bit further. It's not quite going in as hard as it should, or I might need to tap that hole a little bit deeper. I'll see. It's not really too much of an issue right now. At least it's on there and it all fits. So you'll notice I've taken the carburetor off because I need to do a little bit of work on this. This throttle linkage is not in the right orientation for what I want. As you can see, when the throttle plates are closed, it's there, and to open it needs to pull in that direction. Now the Fiat 500 linkage pulls down here, so really I need this point to be up here. So I've got a spare linkage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the centre out of it to make sure that the keyway is correct, and then I'm just going to make a rotary dial style one of these linkages, so I can mount the throttle linkage up there, and then I can just use all the original throttle linkage and it will work perfectly well. And the choke cable, Bowden cable, comes in here and operates that, and that should use the original one as well. So I've plonked on top the carburetor mount with its spacer. It's just got a single bolt through there, and as I say, these are the two studs that are joined directly to the head. So note to self, make sure you set the valve clearances before you fire it up. But I think we're just about ready to, at least for the minute, drop on the rocker cover. Gonna make a cork gasket for that once it's on permanently, because I do like cork gaskets. They work very nicely in that sort of situation. So there we are. That is the 650 completely built with a fully ported cylinder head and skimmed, so should be sitting at about 9.5 to 1 compression ratio, new timing chain, 4 litre Abarth sump. And next time you see this, it's going to have its first fire up. So thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe, click the little bell icon. You'll be able to see this as it fires up. Till the next time, guys, take care. So another few days have passed and the engine is now off the bench, and as you can see on the dark side of the workshop, as the garage door is not open, but we've got the oil filter cover on. I've just set the valve timings. I've got the carburetor all on. I still haven't quite worked out what I'm going to do with the throttle linkage, but at the very least I have a throttle plate that I'll be able to use to faff around with when I'm firing it up. I've got the new actual 650 126 dipstick in there. It's completely filled up with oil. Exhaust is back on and all connected, and we're basically just ready to start wiring it up. We have flywheels back on and giving it a test. I'm still slightly unsure about my ever so slightly sketchy mechanism for connecting the starter there. I hadn't really realised actually quite how much more offset this starter is from the flywheel compared to the 500 version, but I've only ever had to use a single spacer, which is mounted up here, but the bell housing's slightly different. So this starter is spaced off quite massively to take up the offset there, and it might wobble about because the third mounting point doesn't go to the block, it just goes to the bell housing. Obviously with the bell housing not there, I haven't got a mount there, but we will see. I mean, the worst that can happen is it wobbles about, it doesn't engage, and it potentially chips some teeth, but hopefully that won't happen. So what I'll do is I'll wire it up, I'll wire in the ignition, and then we'll get it cranked over without the ignition first of all, and then we'll fire it up properly, full of oil. So it's a 4 litre sump, so it's not going to be short of oil, and it doesn't have any oil leaks anywhere, so we should be good to go. I foresee some fueling issues. There's always fueling issues and setup issues with mixture and stuff, but let's give it a go and see how she sounds. So one of the benefits of running this starter here without the pull start is when it comes to testing it, I can just start it with a key like a modern car. So I've only got the starter wired in, no ignition yet, but oh, that's not engaged that time. What's happened there? There we go. And safety say there's nothing wrong with that battery or that starter. Now just to wire the rest of the ignition system in. So there's a little bit of a fine tweaking to do with the mixture and everything else like that. And obviously I could do with test running it in something where it's not going to try and just walk around the garage. But for the minute, it's fine. It starts, it runs. It's yeah, just needs a little bit of tuning, and we'll be ready to run that fully up to temperature and get it connected to a gearbox. So last video before Christmas, so as you can see from the Christmas lights outside, we're ready to go, and I hope you and your family have a lovely time whatever you're up to. Till next time guys, take care.